I'm Nikki Fogden-Moore, and this is SuperLeaders, the podcast, the playbook for peak performance in a world powered by AI, where we align human potential with a modern digital landscape for leaders at home and with your teams, giving you the tips, tools, and insights to create true, sustainable success. The ultimate combination: healthy, wealthy, happy, and wise. Let's dive in. Welcome back to SuperLeaders. I'm your host, Nikki Fogden-Moore. This is the show where we really explore what it takes to thrive at the highest levels of leadership, and that is not title dependent. In this episode of SuperLeaders, I want to have the most incredible, deep, and exploratory discussion with one of my favorite humans. I met him on a Mark Boris kind of winning the room retreat where we had to pitch ideas. It's Dave Murphy. I've got him in my phone as Dave Flow State Murphy. If we think about your greatest competitive edge these days as a founder or a CEO or someone who's actually trying to get ahead and pioneer in life, what is your state of mind to do that? Together with Dave, we're going to dial into why the world's highest performing leaders find clarity and calm as a vital ingredient to have discernment, genius zones, vision, but also happiness should be on your P&L, where you can operate from a completely different level of consciousness as well, because that sort of moment where you remove your subconscious limiting beliefs and you come into a state of feeling what I call replete or flow state or at peace is the most magical place to sit. So Dave, welcome to the show today. We're going to break down some barriers, remove some limiting beliefs, break open some myths, and teach people why breath is really the most important commodity in our entire world at the moment.
Wow. I mean, thank you for that introduction. You almost don't need me for that for the conversation. You get it all yourself. You've got a deep knowledge of it. So that's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. When we met, even though we were, in the hinterland of Byron Bay, and you ran this fantastic breathwork session, and sometimes we can sit in a bubble of a certain percentage where you operate as, I always think, think like a CEO, plan like a visionary, train like an athlete. I've always had work-life blend where peak performance for me doesn't mean hustling. It also means how can I be in the best state possible? So things that we do daily, it astounds me that when we're running workshops, Dave, or we're going to corporates or we're working with CEOs and founders, I noticed from that breathwork session that you ran that for some people it was the first time they'd even done a meditation or anything to do with actually understanding how important breath is. What is it like for you in your journey? And when we talk about this, I always say bios are going to be in the description, but you've had a radical unveiling, and that story is really relevant to anyone listening to the show or watching this podcast today to take them through that journey.
Yeah, you're right. It's pretty wild how few people have any awareness or understanding of the power of their breath. I say that with no judgment because I was one of those people for a very long time. I spent 15 years in the corporate world, working my way up the ladder, so to speak, and never gave any real thought to my internal state or physiology, or certainly not my breath. Often when I do corporate workshops, one of the first questions I open with is, there's two questions actually. The first one is, is anyone aware of how many breaths they take per day? Which the answer for an average adult is about 25,000. The second question I ask is, how many breaths were you aware that you took today or, yesterday? And the answer for most people is 0. So no one's aware of this, like literally this core function that our bodies, autonomously enable for us, but we have no awareness of it, and we're not taught it. So it's no one's fault. But the unfortunate thing is that therefore no one really has any understanding of the power of our breath when it comes to altering our state of consciousness, our awareness, our focus, our clarity, our creativity. There's so much power in our breath, and we can dive into that a little more if you want. But yeah, that's a huge unlock for so many people, which sounds so simple. It almost sounds boring. It's like,
it's so weird, isn't it? Because you mentioned that you were in this kind of corporate job and, going through the motions. And I mean, we've all had some form of burnout or overwhelm or whatever it's been through our life, because we've probably been conditioned still to hustle and work hard and push down what we're feeling. But when you're an elite athlete, or you're like, I always talk about the Red Bull cliff diver, you get or a sniper or anyone where you have to have precision, you get taught breath as part of your training. And it is no one's fault. We didn't get taught it at school. But we have an opportunity now, if you're listening to the show, to not try and linger too long on why you haven't had access to it, but to realize three important things is that if you're listening to this, number one, whatever advice we're going to give you, it's free. Number two, you don't need a degree in breathing. You can actually manage your breath. And number three is that with micro adoption of what Dave's about to talk about on the show, you will have radical results. So it's really interesting. It doesn't matter whether you're leading a team of 10 or 1 or 10,000. This episode is going to shift the way you think about energy and clarity and what it means to lead at your best. We want to give you permission that you are allowed to know this stuff too.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you went and studied. So tell us a little bit about your journey of why you've become a flow state expert, because I think neuroscience and that genius zone scientific connection, everyone thinks that they can be on all the time, and that's not possible.
Yeah. So as I was exiting the corporate world, my initial entry point was breath work. So I went and studied breath work. I became a sort of certified facilitator and did my training and study in breath work was the initial entry point. We can certainly go deeper into that. But then as I was building out my offering and proposition, and I was working primarily with executives and businesses and teams, so I made a very clear and conscious decision to go after that sort of segment as my audience, primarily because that was me and I came from that world, so I felt that a good resonance in that space. And as I was building out my programs and offerings, I kind of a couple of years in realized it was it was all great, and there was a lot of impact and people were getting a lot of benefit. But I wanted to go deeper, and as I sort of went deeper in my own just curiosity, I realized that there was a huge overlap or sort of crossing over of the Venn diagram with breath work and this concept fascinated by flow state, and went deep into that and realized through my training and my work that we can access flow more reliably and we can use our breath to get there. I should probably, before I keep talking more about flow state, define what flow state is. I think
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, when you talk about flow state, what actually happens in the brain and the body when you access that state? So how do you get there? What is it?
Yeah, and that's the perfect question, because that's what I realized through the breath work was like all these things happen in the body and in the brain that allow us to shift into an altered state, flow state. And so I'll answer that question, but at first I'll just define what flow is, because most people have probably heard the term, but people have varying understandings of it. So, I mean, probably the easiest and most simple way to describe it is it's being truly deeply in the zone when you just feel on, everything's humming perfectly. The sort of official definition is the state of consciousness where we feel our best and perform our best. And what is going on in that state that allows us to feel our best and perform our best? So probably the primary thing that happens when we drop into a flow state, and again, breath can get us here as well, is that we experience a deactivation or a quietening down of the prefrontal cortex. And for those that aren't that familiar with that, that's the part of the brain that we basically spend all of our waking hours in, especially in a sort of a business or a work setting. We are in the rational, analytical, thinking mind all the time, which is the prefrontal cortex of the brain. And when we drop into flow, that part of the brain actually quietens right down and even potentially goes offline. And when that happens, we experience the activation or lighting up of other parts of the brain, which is literally how we in flow experience new ideas, new insights, new perspectives, and creativity, because we're literally creating new neural pathways and connections in parts of the brain that are not connected in regular waking consciousness. So it literally shifts us into a different state of consciousness and brainwave
it's like
state.
a play state. I remember you saying it's like, a childlike state where you're in this land of possibilities. When you have imaginary friends as a kid, or you come up with all these stories, or you're writing, like we lose our play state as adults because we're trying to be responsible. So when you can move into the other area of the brain, which is what you're going to talk about, the easiest way to access creativity is to have no filters, right? No limiting beliefs.
Yeah. I love that you mentioned the play thing, because if you measure someone's brainwave activity, brainwaves in flow, they are the most similar to their brainwaves when they're dreaming. And what's interesting about that is that when you're dreaming, constraints don't apply as much. So when you're in a dream, you're capable of things that you're just not capable of in sort of regular waking life. But but you experience this limitlessness when you're in a dream. And when you're in flow, your brainwave activity is in a very similar state. So that's one of the reasons why our performance enhances so much when we're in flow, is because we experience this release of what's holding us back, or there could be limiting beliefs as well. But our sense of possibility expands enormously when we're in
Yeah.
flow.
And that's interlinked. So, in order to access peace, or my word is replete. So, to be in our coaching and this with super leaders, I've created a model which is called zero gravity. And zero gravity is where there's no pull or push or anything. You're just in this vortex there's no opposing forces. And that is the most creative in it. People sort of would say, oh, you have to go and do ayahuasca, or you have to go and do mushrooms, you have to go and do things. But I really believe that breath is the fastest way to access that. And you can do that at any given point in time. So now that you've explained what flow state is as a feeling, we talk about, breaths just seem so simple for hard-nosed execs who take life really seriously. I wrote an article today that's going to come out next week. It's called "It's Suddenly Cool to Be a Fit CEO." So I believe there's no time like the present to give yourself permission to learn and these things like an athlete, and all the stuff that athletes get trained on. Our CEOs and leaders that are carrying all this responsibility, the same type of weight of making business decisions or family decisions or about your kids, puts pressure on our frontal lobe to think and rationalize and make calculations. You move out of your inner GPS, which can give you access to all knowing. So I've just rambled a little bit and everyone's going, what is she on about? But I know you're now going to give me the scientific term to all knowing, which is when you press pause, you can access information from different records you didn't even know you had.
Yeah, I mean, when we're in flow and when we're into altered states, induced by breath work, we are able to access the subconscious mind, which is the storehouse of all of our past experiences, our limiting beliefs, basically our entire history of everything we've experienced, all our perception and beliefs is there. When we drop into flow, that becomes available to us, and we experience rapid subconscious processing. So ideas and concept and things and people and events and circumstances and memories all become available to us when we're in flow, that are just not available when we're stuck in our thinking rational mind. So we just get that access to this much more expansive state of possibility and being, which is a really beautiful state to be in from an executive perspective, a really powerful and productive state and creative state, which is I guess
Totally.
what we're all seeking.
Yeah. The next step on that is, we know that many founders and CEOs are running at 100 miles an hour and they're going, yeah, I really like this flow state. Give me the tool to
Yeah.
access that. I always say to people, it's a breath in and a breath out, pauses you at any moment. So what tool can you say to people just right now while you're listening to this, so you could really hear the information? How do they access their breath to receive and stay calm even when there's chaos around them? What's one tool that could help them get into flow state, or at least be a preliminary setup for that? Even if they're in a
Yeah.
boardroom or a meeting room, or they've got to go into something, what's a tool to start to lower yourself into a better state for thinking and dealing with stress?
Yeah. Yeah, I'll give one, but there are a few things to consider. One, we may not go into it, but one is around just your environment and distraction management, because that's a huge one. It's a really challenging one, especially for sort of high performing executives. Just
Yeah.
the constant barrage of notifications, informations, people wanting you. So we can talk about that if you want, but if
Yep.
you're pretty good at enabling a distraction free environment, or as best of your ability, then the immediate and actionable things that you can do in terms of utilizing the breath to drop into that state. And I'll give you a technique, but I want to give you a little bit of context to it, because this lands usually for a lot of people. When we're in a stressed or activated state throughout our workday, which most of us are most of the time, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, because stress is not objectively a bad thing. Sometimes we want and need stress. But a lot of us exist in a highly stressed or activated state for most of the day. And what that means is our internal system, when we're in an activated state, and this is a physiological process that's probably primal, been around forever, is that when we're in that stressed and activated state, our body sends blood and oxygen to our major muscle groups to prepare us to run in case we need to run. Basically, the fight or flight response. Most of us go through our entire days in a low key fight or flight state, a sympathetic state, if you're familiar with that term. And so what I mentioned that because why the simple breath and a simple couple of minutes or 30 seconds of breathing can be so effective is that it's the most reliable and efficient tool to shift you out of that activated sympathetic state and into a more parasympathetic state. When we shift into a more parasympathetic state, which is some people might be familiar with rest and digest terminology, when we start to shift into that state, the blood flow comes back to the brain and the oxygen flow comes back from the major muscle groups where it was when you were prepared to run. And this is all subconscious. You're not aware of it. It's all happening subtly in the background. But as we drop into that more parasympathetic state, the blood flow and oxygen comes back to the brain. And when that happens, we're able to think a lot more clearly, have a lot more clarity, have a lot more creativity, and just overall feel a greater sense of calmness. So that's a little bit of, scratching the surface, but a little bit of detail as to what's going on, why it's, because some people hear, oh yeah, I just take a few breaths. I can do that. I understand that I could sit there and do that for a minute, but I'm not sure why that would benefit me. So I just wanted to give that little bit of
I think it's
context.
important.
Yeah.
And what that also does is it helps you connect the dots between fight or flight, because that's self-mastery. So to have that awareness when you start to raise in tempo, your breathing gets shallow, you might get lightheaded, and you're like, oh, I've got to quickly get this email, run to this next meeting. That's already being chased by a lion inside your body. So what that description you've given is very important for people to understand that that's the state shift from fight or flight in the most simple terms. And the fastest way to do that, as you say, is to listen for your breath, because when you're listening for your breath, you can't think about anything else because you're listening for your breath.
And that's spot on. And I'll give two little practical things for people. So some people, this is the most common and most probably people may have already heard of it, but the most common simple thing you could do if you literally have 30 seconds or 1 minute, 2 minutes, like really short amount of time, the most simple thing you can do is what's referred to as box breathing or square breathing that most people have probably at least heard of by this point. But a little bit of context on that was developed by the Navy SEALs. They were trained to do this particular type of breathing, which is generally, in terms of what that actually means, if you're not familiar, is a 4-second inhale, a 4-second hold of the breath, a 4-second exhale, 4-second hold of the breath, and just repeating that pattern. That's where the box or square
Let's
shape
do that
comes from.
once here, because people can do it with us while they're listening. So take us through one round of the box breath, because we still want people to be awake listening to the rest of this episode. So let's not do more than one round, but let's take them through one round.
Yeah, well, we'll do one round and you can keep going if you're liking it. So first we start off with and we breathe, when we do this, we breathe in through the nose and out through the mouth. So let's start off with a inhale through the nose, 2, 3, 4, hold your breath, 2, 3, 4, exhale through the mouth, 2, 3, 4, hold your breath, 2, 3, 4. If you want to try another round of that, it's just that pattern on repeat. The Navy SEALs, the Navy SEALs developed that literally as they were trained in it, as they were being choppered into combat situations, and that they would all sit on the chopper, fully geared up, ready to go, and they'd all sit there breathing like that because that is the most down-regulating, calming breathing pattern that people discovered. So that's a really simple one that you can do, and the beautiful thing is you can do it at your desk, you can do it in the car, you can do it walking, you can do it wherever and however. So that's a really simple one, and literally a minute of that is effective. 30 seconds of that is effective. So you don't need to carve out a huge chunk of time in your day. The other one I really like, which I probably utilize more actually, and in some ways is simpler, is just, again, for 30 seconds or whatever small amount of time, is extending, so doubling the length of your exhales to your inhales. So most people, on average, you breathe in for a second or maybe two and out for a second or two. So instead of that, I want you to breathe in for 1 or 2 seconds and out for 3 or 4 seconds. So you lengthen the exhale. The reason for that is because the body cannot recognize when it's in a state. Sorry, the body cannot recognize it's in a state of stress on an exhale. So if you think of every stressful situation you might experience in life, from silly ones to like knocking a glass off the table, you'd go, as you saw it falling, or you're someone walking around the corner, you're like, oh my God, sorry. Or you witness a car crash across the street as you saw it happen. Every stressful experience we have in life, no matter how big or small, has a corresponding inhale.
Mm.
And the important thing is that we remember to, most people don't, unfortunately, is ever really release those exhales. So if you can just be conscious and extend the length of your exhales during your day, again, sitting at your desk, or if you're about to give a presentation or have an important meeting, just sit there and do some double 4-second exhales, 6-second exhales while you're breathing. It signals to the body that you're no longer in a stressful state. It's really
You can
powerful.
put a post-it note or set a timer or whatever. This is the thing that I want to talk to you about. I love those tips. You've got the box breathing and you've got the extension of the exhale. And by default, if you've been an athlete or you've been trained in certain circumstances, you get taught these things because they are beyond survival mode. They're essential. We need this now more than ever. I want to
Yeah.
talk to you a little bit, Dave. Obviously, you're coming up to Super Leaders Boardroom Retreat in March, and we're going to be doing some amazing things there. But I want to talk a little bit about people needing to just feel okay in themselves, because one of the
Yeah.
things that founders and CEOs and leaders, whether you're a parent or not, is that people have stopped trusting their own
Mm,
knowledge and their own vision and their own. I talk about soggy pieces of the puzzle. So if everyone's the
yeah.
same, the puzzle doesn't stick together because there's nothing. But we're all individuals and we all have these unique fiber optic cables that extend pre-generation, post-generation. And regardless of what's happening in this digital landscape where bots are now taking everything over, and we've just handed over this
Mm,
intellectual sovereignty and this genius zone. I'm really loving the individualism that's coming from creative musicians, artists, even like myself. I've written super leaders and super teams myself. I haven't used anything else, and pouring ourselves
mm,
into our day, pouring our individual selves into our friendships, into our relationships, into our communities, into our teams is essential. But people are losing track of how to do it because they feel like they're missing out and they're asking Siri for everything. So the result
mm,
of having quick solutions with AI is we're cognitively not using our mental muscle, and we're not
mm.
accessing all the aspects of this incredible machine that is the human body. And when we
Yeah.
jumped on the call today, you mirrored a concern that I have, which is this element of authenticity. Because I said, oh, what's your website? And you were like, Dave, underscore Murphy.co, because Dave Murphy was taken. And I'm like, yeah, but you're you. So this level of work that you're doing and that I'm doing is going, this is the time to double down more than ever on your quirky genius human
Mm,
self and to
yes.
access that zone that is unfiltered, because nothing will be able to replicate that. So could you share
Yeah.
your perspective on this topic around bring more of yourself to your day, use productivity tools, but actually make sure you're using your own operating system properly?
Yeah. Yeah. This one's so important. I love it. Something that comes to mind there, which is an interesting concept, or hopefully an interesting concept for people, which is if you agree or understand that our attention is a form of energy, and most people at the moment are putting all of their attention externally. So they're particularly, if we're talking about working professionals here, or founders or executives, they're putting their attention into the technology, the AI, the team, the business. All of their attention is going externally, which means all of their energy is projected outward.
Hmm.
And that's okay. Again, there's nothing wrong with that, because sometimes that's part of what we need to do, especially as leaders. But if all of your attention and energy is projected outward, you have literally nothing left for yourself, and you will have nothing left to cultivate internally in terms of expressing your own unique authenticity. So that's another reason why I really like practices like breath work,
Mm.
meditation, or things like, if you think surfing or gardening or cooking or dancing or poetry or whatever your thing is, where your attention, I mean, I guess you could argue your attention is still outward on those activities, but they're not done for the sort of productivity, efficiency, work, achievement status, or results or benefits. They're done because of the pure joy, hopefully, if they're your hobbies or interests. They're
I
done for
think
the
they're also
joy of doing
using
them.
skills to do those things. Like surfing is about concentration, waiting for the wave.
Yeah.
Gardening, you're focused on something, but it's a direct result to what your body's doing. It's not a
Yeah,
validation exercise. It's an
exactly.
intrinsic
Yeah,
skill. That's
yeah,
the worry I have, when in my dad's era and growing up, well, he was always building something or in the shed, and my brothers learned how to build dams and bridges with him down the farm. And there were cognitive skills that we were using. And now it won't be long, people won't know how to use their hands because they'll be
yeah,
talking to Siri the whole time. So, what you're explaining is a state of productivity without in your own zone, like surfing or
yeah,
running or swimming or music. You're in this little vortex where you're thinking about a skill and you're using a variety of cognitive functions to complete
yeah.
that skill.
In the flow science, they refer to that as the merging of awareness with action. So
I love that.
what you're doing, yeah, what your mind is aware of or thinking about and what you're doing become one and the same. You see this, my favorite example, and it's hard to think of visual examples of people in flow, but one of my favorites is Roger Federer. If anyone remembers when he was sort of at his peak and in his prime, you could see in those, especially when they did those sort of slow-mo
Slow
close-ups of him hitting a
motions. Yeah.
ball, you can see his eyes in that locked in state where his awareness, there was nothing else that he was aware of in the world other than hitting that ball and what he was
Yeah.
doing, and his
The
action was obviously
vortex. Yeah.
reflecting that. So any activity where our aware, and it can be work, but where our awareness completely merges with our action is one of the core characteristics of being deeply in flow.
And I guess the other thing is, because they don't want to hear me harping on, we're on the show for you today, is what's an area, as a coach or a pioneer, sometimes I get a bit, I wouldn't say evangelistic, but maybe a bit sad
Yeah,
for me at the moment with all the productivity tools. I'm doubling down on preventing overwhelm, putting leaders
yeah,
back in the driver's seat, all those analogies, but they're actually very, very practical skill sets that I'm trying to pass down for self leadership and self mastery. What for
yeah,
you, where do you get stopped in your tracks sometimes, even though you're loving your work and you're doing great things? That it just feels like it doesn't matter how much you're putting in, that the convenience factor that people have picked up and will always do through the time of man,
yeah.
whatever's fastest, easiest, we won't worry about the consequences.
Mm.
When you're speaking now, how do you get people to engage in slowing down and being more on purpose and talking about the cost of convenience in a neuroscience level? Because if you're not using these skills, you lose them. So, how
Yeah.
does that translate into your work teaching flow state and cognitive skills and reminding people to do these things, and how important it is?
Yeah, I think that it's all become so much more important because of that. Because the cognitive load people are bearing now because of these tools largely is just increasing, and we were already like pre AI, we were already pretty maxed out
Yeah,
as humans when it comes to, and I'm again speaking about professionals and executives and founders. They're high performing, they get a lot done, they move quickly, they perform at a high standard, and the cognitive load on our human and the load on our human physiology was, we were maxing out. A lot of people are maxing out, and especially if they don't have that awareness for recovery. Again, I love your analogies around like athletes or, you know, Navy SEALs or elite service people. It's built into their, like, find one elite sports team that don't have
yeah,
recovery, significant recovery sessions built into their calendars and their schedules every
yeah.
day. And the issue we're now facing is AI has enabled so much greater efficiency and productivity and output, but we're not balancing that. In fact, what we're just doing is adding more. It's
Filling
that
all the
promise that we were,
gaps. Yeah,
yeah, we're filling all the gaps because there's
yeah.
now more gap to fill because we've gotten a lot quicker. You know, the thing that used to take 3 hours now takes 10 minutes, but we've just filled that 2 hours and 50 minutes that we could have done other things with. We just filled it with more work, and it just compounds. And so more than ever,
Self-discipline. It's self-discipline, isn't it?
yeah,
You've just answered the question about what you're noticing, like I am. If we come back to it, you and I we've got a lot of self-discipline. I've had to have that from very early on. I've also had a lot of training programs and been in sports a long time. My new book, SuperLeaders, is all based around NFL Super Bowl. What does it mean to have a playbook and who's on the field and
mm,
all the things that we all should know. But what I was thinking about when you were mentioning this cognitive load, we know this. Like, you and I are not having a discussion that 99% of people that are listening to the show, they know deep down that they need to probably have a little bit more self-discipline. They know deep down that they should have their winning weeks, carve out some mean time, put it in the agenda, work-life blend. We know this.
Yeah.
It's about making that action and taking that permission and the participation in your life to not say, all the excuses, as far as I'm concerned, have been removed. If you're an intelligent person with an emotional level of intellect and awareness, then you owe it to yourself to build out your weeks, build out your days, and lead by example with your team to show up in the best version. That might mean that you're not even available for a certain period of time because you've got to regroup. So we have more responsibility than ever as founders and parents. I don't even know if you saw that New Zealand campaign about online things for kids. It's very well done. But we have to lead by example because you can't, there's no one behind me. And so we really, the buck stops and the accountability stops with us. So it's actually stopping and listening to this and going, where are the excuses that I'm saying I'm too busy, I don't have the tools, I wasn't an athlete, I wasn't a Navy SEAL? Well, those are all things you can get inspired by, because the things that you've just explained to us are free. The things that you've just explained to us can happen in 30 seconds, and we know they work. They are proven neuroscience techniques. And so I like to have a don't give me excuses, no hope project show. And if you were to give someone your Navy SEAL chat and go, this is your chance listening to me and Nikki today, what's a piece of advice you'd give anyone listening to this going, it's all right for those two? How can you unlock for them that this is relevant for them as well? That it's no longer about survival mode. You do have these tools and anyone can access them.
Yeah. What's coming through, I would suggest, because you're spot on that some people will hear this and be like, yeah, it's nice for you too, or that, you don't know what it's like to run my business. What I would suggest is, and do this now as soon as we finish recording, is go to next week on your calendar, block out and prioritize every day, make it 30 minutes, whatever you feel comfortable with, but prioritize every day on your calendar the thing, whether it's a breath work, a meditation, a walk in nature, a swim in the ocean, a gardening, whatever your thing is, running, just block it out every day. That's the number one priority, and try and ideally do more, do an hour or whatever you feel comfortable with, but just go, I'm going to be absolutely steadfast in my commitment to that for a week, and get to the end of the week. I promise you, there will be no detrimental. You won't have missed anything. You won't have dropped in performance. If anything,
nobody will die.
I almost guarantee everything will be better when it comes to your energy, your vitality, your performance, your creative thinking. So I just start there. Just
love that.
Some people can hear all this and be like, fuck, now I've got to transform my whole everything. It's like, maybe, but just start with a week and see what happens. Probably at the end of the week, you'll be like, well, that was awesome. So now it won't feel like a whole mountain to climb. It'll be like, well, I'm definitely doing that because it's amazing.
Yeah. And I've obviously, someone sent me a note the other day, like, I read your book overnight. I was like, oh, that's crap, because they were like, it was so good, I've given it to someone else. I was like, well, that's shit, because that means you haven't used it. It's a forever manual. It's full of worksheets. It's got big font in it. It's written for dudes. It's like fill this out, do this, and report back. There's ways to get in touch with me. Like, it's me on paper that you can even reach out. We're so busy ticking a box that we've listened to a podcast, we've consumed something, we've gone Diary of a CEO and Mel Robbins, and oh my God, it's so good. But I don't see anyone implementing anything. The fastest way to get results is just do one thing, and that's your vital ingredients. That's what I love about my clients, is they're genuinely good people. Sometimes we need coaches or people in our lives that hold us accountable for just that micro habit that becomes a lifelong, it just flips over to something which becomes, I get to do this. So if you're listening to this, you're not, whatever state you're in, if you're listening to the car, if you're in the gym, if you're whatever, if you're listening to this with your team, I hope you are, this is your permission to go, I get to do this. I actually get to transform my neurological pathways, the physiological setup of my body, and most importantly, my happiness. Because when you access flow state and play, and when you have more of this in your life, your P&L of happiness goes up almost immediately. Like, everyone says to me, you're like a Kermit the Frog meets a giraffe. It's ridiculous. But that happiness energy bank is because can only show up for other people. Also, life is rich. It's hard. Running a business is harder than ever. Being a parent is harder than ever. We know that. So therefore you owe it to yourself to find the joy in the little things. To me, that's what you're talking about for flow state is joy. It's there's no boundaries, there's no rules. It's just a moment where you can play some music with headphones on or learn a new skill like the guitar.
When we're truly in flow, the last thing I say is when we're truly, because this is underappreciated aspect of flow, what you're talking about, the joy. And there's a neurochemical reason for that. When someone drops into flow, they experience a rush of serotonin, dopamine, this neurochemical called anandamide, which is also known as the bliss molecule. It literally feels so good. It's a blissful, beautiful feeling when you've truly dropped in and immersed yourself in flow state. So if nothing else, do it for the reason of it's one of the most satisfying experiences you can have when you're truly in flow, and it's incredibly good for you.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just so appreciative that my guests and clients on our retreat and the people that work with me get to work with you, Dave, and experience someone who's so aligned with these tools and so graciously and humbly can teach that without expectations. You're not forcing anyone into anything. You're sharing decades of experience, learned philosophies and things, but also this calm way of explaining that there are no expectations. No, you can't be perfect at breath work. Everyone's
No.
different. And personalization of what works for you, accepting help when it's offered. For example, we'll put all our tips in the show notes below. We'll put both of our contact details there. We'll give a couple of worksheets. Like, we're here to impart more knowledge and to share this journey. And the more people we have that pick these tools up, the better it is for communities, companies, families, and everything else. So if there's one thing that you have a mantra for yourself, just for people to take away today, knowing they're going to get all this knowledge in the show notes, knowing they can have access to everything, I'll link them to your website. What's one little mantra or sort of, I don't know, maybe it's a statement or something that you'd want someone to take away from this episode today, Dave?
We're entering an era where human creativity is probably going to be the most valuable skill on the planet, if it's not already. And in all of my study, and I have this written on my desk and I remind myself all the time, but in all my study, this has become glaringly true, is that creativity starts with the breath. And if you're feeling like you're needing to solve a problem, push through something, see something from a different perspective, or whatever it is, you require, and that's what humans, it's going to be our unique and inimitable skill, is creativity. And it starts with the breath. It starts with an internal state. And so that's probably my little mantra is, creativity starts with the breath.
Yeah, I love that so much. So creativity starts with breath, and creativity isn't becoming the next Warhol. It's also a visionary roadmap for your business. It's how to parent better. It's connecting with your
Yeah,
team, with your partnerships. Creativity is
exactly.
an all-encompassing word around how to access connection.
Just on that, I have two young kids and a wife that's being a full-time mother at the moment. And I would say parents are some of the most creative people, or need to be some of the most creative people on the planet. So you're absolutely right that it's not about art necessarily or music or anything. We can be creative in anything we do. And that starts, again, it's using the parenting analogy. If the parent or mother can have that moment to ground and center with the breath, the flow on effects for what they will create with that child or what they will do with that child, and the child mirroring and learning from that's super powerful.
Oh, I know. It gives me goosebumps. I think we want to shift you out of coping. We want to shift you out of
Yeah.
survival mode. We want to give you these tools. And the flip side of that is conscious leadership of self first.
Yes.
Also, it's never too late to start. Participation, enjoyment, joining clubs. We spoke about when you get into a genius zone. I will caveat that it doesn't matter how much I visualize getting in a barrel surfing. I'm still like this awkward giraffe that can only go one direction. So there are limitations, but it's the feeling that you get. So it's the feeling that same wave that I get would get a pro surfer when they get barreled, I get on a 2-foot wave at Little Cove in Noosa going, woo, that sense of play, we want to bring that back in, that sense of joy. It's just quite simply as accessing your breath. So if you're in the boardroom today or you've got lots of stress on, what I do is I go, wow, I get to do this, get to work with all these incredible people. I get to make these big decisions, and it shifts your state from a chore and a stress to an opportunity. And the breath work allows you to go, what's the next right step? And anyone listening to this, if you can go and hang out and connect with Dave, I highly recommend it. I know that, Dave, you're joining us for this completely immersive experience in March on Makepeace Island. We run two a year as part of our SuperLeaders cohort. This is the kind of immersive moment that really unlocks permission for many leaders to add to their vault of skills and realize they can put their oxygen mask on first. And Navy SEALs have to do that before they jump out of a plane. So if you're a parent, before you get up in the morning, you can put your oxygen mask on first by taking those breaths, and we'll share some more things. So Dave, thank you so much. I know that I just feel so grateful when I get to have conversations with intelligent people that practice what they preach. To me, you're one of those, and I'm super excited for you to join our Super Leaders edition on Makepeace Island in a few weeks with some secret agendas. I never reveal the agenda till you get there, which is very exciting. And if you are tuning into the show for the first time, this is Super Leaders. Until next time, you stay healthy, wealthy, and wise. You've been listening to Super Leaders, the podcast, the show where CEOs, founders, and elite thinkers decode what really works in leadership, life, and AI. I'm Nikki Fogden-Moore, and we're here to break through the hype and bring you raw, real conversations from beyond the boardroom. Keep your edge, train your mindset, and lead with purpose. Download the workbook and join our movement inside the Accelerate app on nikkifogdenmoore.com. Until next time, stay healthy, happy, wealthy, and wise.